Alright, CNT120, we're finishing up our Chapter 2 lab. The last part we're looking at is domain names. So, real quickly, first one we looked at MAC addresses. Second one we looked at port numbers. The third one we looked at IP version 4 addresses. Then we did a fourth one on IP version 6 addresses. Now we're going to look at domain names. These are all the different naming things that Chapter 2 talked about with you. So, we're going to look at some different things on domain names on Windows, and then we're going to turn around and do the same thing on Linux. Oops, get out of here. We'll do the same thing on Linux. So let me do the Windows side. I'll minimize my VM for now, just to keep things a little bit more sane. We'll do the Windows side. I'm going to open my browser, and I'm going to load the web page I have listed here, whois.icann.org. Okay? Now, ICANN is your organization that manages all the numbers and names when dealing with the internet, all the domain names and all the IP addresses and so forth. So I'm using their utility to say, hey, who is blah domain name? When you buy a domain name, if you remember when we talked about this in Chapter 2, when you buy a domain name, you have to register all kinds of stuff with it. Who are you? What's your company? Where you're located? What's your phone number? All that jazz. Well, I can do just the opposite. If I have a domain name like hack.edu, well, we know what hack.edu is, but as far as the internet's concerned, what is hack.edu? I'm going to do a lookup. Yes, I have to do the CAPTCHA thing here. Swift and star, there we go, okay. So we'll do a lookup on this guy. This now queries the, when I put in hack.edu, it queries the DNS system to say, what do you know about hack.edu? Well, as I scroll down through here, this is all the information it knows. It says, well, this belongs to Harrisburg Area Community College. Here's their address. Here's their technical support people that manage this. Here's the IP addresses of the DNS servers. Here's what... So this is all the information that is known about hack.edu. And this would be true if you buy a domain name and have a web server. This would be the same thing. You would find this information out. Well, this is what we're talking about with domain names. These have to be registered to something. These have to be pointed to something. These are addresses of particular servers that would resolve hack.edu. And it all depends on the company. This might actually be the address of the web server, or this might just be the resolver that points to a web server. But this is the link up, the name to the IP address. That is the link up between the two. So that's the kind of thing I find when I query, in this case, hack.edu. I'm going to tell you to do the same thing for like google.com, and maybe even try another domain name that you can think of, ESPN.com or whatever. But I'm also going to do this from a command line. So I'm going to open up my command prompt here, and I'm going to do an NS lookup. NS lookup is going to do the same kind of thing. It's going to hit the DNS server here at the college, in my case, because I'm sitting in the college lab, and I'll do google.com. And this is going to query the DNS server here to say, hey, what do you know about google.com? And it's going to resolve that into addresses that it knows. It's like, well, I know this address for google.com. So if I try to load google.com, my DNS query is going to resolve back to this IP address. So there has to be, if you remember in your reading with domain names, there has to be some connection between the domain name and IP address. We're now finding that out using things like this whois, or in this case, NS lookup. Well, while I'm here, before I leave this, I'm going to open my notepad file that I've been adding to, and I'm going to, there's my MAC address, there's my ping 4, there's my ping 6. I'm going to copy my result here because that's what I want you to do. Hit the enter key, come in here and paste this. Now I have my domain name lookup that I did. Okay, so I'm going to save that while I'm here so I don't forget about that. Alrighty. Now, the only other thing we're going to do is I can actually, this is my Windows side that I did. I'm going to do the same kind of thing on my Linux side. So I'm going to close this out. I'll close this out for now, and I'll close this out. I'll slide this over here, and now I'll open my Linux, and I'm going to do the same kind of thing. I'll open the browser here. You should have a browser here on the bottom of your bar, and I'm now going to open up a GoDaddy. So hopefully you recognize that one. from ads on TV or whatever. GoDaddy is where I could buy a domain name if I wanted to. So here I tell you, okay, try to find out, networking is awesome. Could I buy that? Networking is awesome. Could I buy this domain name? And sure enough, as of right now, it's available. Nobody owns it, and I could buy it for, looks like $12 for about a year, and for 2 years it looks like it could be about $20 kind of thing. Look at that. So I could buy this domain name, and when if I were to go through the process of doing this, I would say my name is Doug Brown, my email address is blah, my address is blah, and the IP address of my web server is blah. And this is how you build that DNS database. All that information has to get plugged in when you buy the domain name, and that gets registered with DNS servers. So there you can find out whether domain names are available. And I can even buy a couple domain names that all these domain names here, .net, .org, .info, would all point to the same web server. That's what your large companies do, by the way. All right, I'm going to minimize that. I'm going to open my command prompt, and I most likely do not have installed the Whois app. So I'm going to do a sudo apt install Whois. Now, I believe I did it on mine already, but I will go through the process. Yeah, it's actually already installed, but you're going to do the sudo apt install Whois, and that will install the utility for me to run a Whois right from here, and I can do a Whois hack.edu, and it'll go query and find out the same information I saw earlier. That's pretty much the same result I saw on the Windows side. Look at that. I'm going to ask you to do a Whois on a Raspberry Pi, and we'll save that. So we'll do a Whois Raspberry Pi.org, I believe. It's going to query that and pull up that this is a website owned for an organization called Raspberry Pi. Those are small computers that you can buy. Pretty awesome little computers, by the way. And this is their registration for it. This organization is based out of the UK, out of Britain. That's where you see addresses like Cambridge and Cambridgeshire and that sort of thing. And there is a query right from my Linux command prompt with the Whois. So again, on this one, I will open up my home folder. I'll go to my documents. I'll open my little Linux lab thing. Here was my MAC address. There's my ping 4. There's my ping 6. I'll go to the bottom down here. I'll hit the enter key a couple times. And I'm going to copy this. Oops, go back over here. I'll scroll up and I will copy my Raspberry Pi. Who is my Raspberry Pi? Right-click copy. Come in here, right-click paste. And I'll save this guy. There's my Raspberry Pi Whois. I'll save that for submission later. I can close all those out. So there is, on my Linux, doing the same kind of thing, looking at name resolution through using the browser up there, but also then using my command line. Alrighty, that is the last piece that we need to do for our labs. So the only thing I would need to do now is, on my Windows machine, I would want to make sure I log into D2L. I will log into D2L, and I'm going to grab these files that I created. I created this CNT Lab Windows text file. I will submit that to the D2L Dropbox, and I'm also going to submit my DNS port capture. This is the Wireshark capture of my DNS ports. So I'll submit those two files on the Windows side. I'll then, and again, I'll just open my browser and log into D2L. Nothing fancy here. Open my browser. Come on, here we go. Log into D2L. Once I'm in there, find the Chap2 Dropbox, put those two files in, log out, close it out. I will then want to repeat the same process on my Linux VM. Open my browser, log into D2L, ehack.hack.edu. I'll log in, I'll grab my Chapter 2 file that I created. That's this one that I created. It's in my home folder, documents. It's this guy right here that I have my MAC address, my ping 4, my ping 6, and my Whois in. I'll grab that text file and drop it right into the D2L Dropbox for Chapter 2, then log out. And then I can close my VM down and shut my machine down. There's Chapter 2 and the last part dealing with domain names.